You know, as soon as the season ends, every year it's the same thing. The very next day, I see in my comments and hear from fans that they can't wait for Georgia football to come back. They miss it oh so much. Well, here I am. Today is the day. Georgia football is back. That's right. The Dogs are opening spring practice, and Kirby Smart got everything kicked off today, meeting with the media for the first time here in 2025 as we look ahead to the upcoming season. Let's get into it.
Yeah, welcome back, guys. Got a lot to go over probably in a little bit of time. I know you guys probably want to ask a bunch of questions, so I want to try to get all the information I can. We're getting ready to start spring practice today. I'm excited. This group has worked really hard since the end of the year last year. We've had a bunch of time to spend together as coaches, staff. Our skull sessions have started. We've got a lot of new players. It feels like more new players than ever before, which I think I say that every year, but the numbers don't say that it's more new guys, but it certainly feels like that. We're averaging about 33% new per year, which you'd like for that number back in the old days to be 20 to 25% new every year. But it's turning over more and quicker, which we have less turnover than most places. We pride ourselves on retention, stability. The foundation of this program is built through high school programs and bringing good kids into the program that can become good football players. But as we do every year, I'm going to try to make as many announcements as I can quickly. Colbie's with us. Colbie's going to be practicing with us. He's cleared. So he's practicing. He's been working out with us. Guys that are out for spring, I think we have 9 total guys, which I do a year-to-year average. I think 2024 we had 12 out. 2023 we had 8 out. 2022 we had 14 out. I think we're at 8 or 9, depending on how you classify a couple guys. We've got 5 shoulder surgeries that happened at the end of the year. Those are all rehabbing right now. They're in really good progression in terms of getting back. Monroe, Gabe, Colton, Christian Miller, and Jalen Morgan all had labral repairs, which is very common. I had it when I played here. And that's, I think, 5 of those. We've averaged 5 to 6 every spring. And then we've got Ryan Montgomery, who's had the ACL repair, Branson, who had the PCL repair, Rod Robinson, who had the ankle repair, and then Thorson, who had the ACL, MCL repair. So those are all guys that are working through things. They may be available for maybe some things in spring, like walkthrough type things, but not in practice spring. And then limited, Joseph Jonah-Jice coming off the foot navicular surgery he had, and he looks great. He's working out, running. He'll be limited to start spring and try to get to work his way back. That's kind of where we are from a medical standpoint. We do have some soft tissue injuries coming out of the off season, but nothing substantial there. So I'm excited where we are in terms of guys being able to be out there because we've got a lot of healthy guys that can get reps. So I'm excited about where we are for the spring. Looking forward to getting out there and kind of seeing our guys. You guys will have a lot of questions, I'm sure, about new guys. I don't know because I haven't got a chance to really see them. I can tell you what they look like in shorts and running around at workouts, but we haven't done a lot of football work until we start up today. So that's what we'll be doing moving forward. With that, I'll open it up for questions.
All right, that's a pretty good place to start right there. So first off, he got through a lot right off the top. So let's start at the beginning, and that is that he talked about how they like to build this program and what goes into it and the choices they make and how they build the superstructure, I like to call it, of the program. And he just reiterated everything that he's been doing since he's been at Georgia. They want to build through recruiting. That's going to be the core of their team. They're going to go get the best players. Then they're going to bring them in and develop them. And that is something that we've seen has proven to be a winning strategy for Georgia. It has built them up to be a program that is widely considered to be the number 1 program in college football today. Not the number 1 team in any given season or any game, but the number 1 program because of the way they run it. It's bigger than any one season, one game, one player, anything like that. So that was the beginning. So we steady as she goes right there as far as that's concerned. And then he mentioned the players that aren't going to be there. There were some interesting names along the way there, guys that are recovering. Glad to hear everything's moving along as it should be. So hopefully we'll get to see more bodies rather than fewer bodies this spring and that everybody can make it to the season healthy. So fingers crossed for all of that. That's good. And of course, Kirby should be excited because this is the kind of thing that this is the time of year that he admittedly prefers. This is his favorite time of the year because he actually gets to be on the grass, do some coaching. You know, he's excited, just like we are as fans, to be talking actual football, being back out there and getting things done. It was a fairly quiet off season so far for Georgia, so that's good. He didn't have to answer a bunch of questions, you know, about off-field stuff, anything like that. It's mostly just portal, so that's good. Except for the one update on Colbie Young, and he says that Colbie's cleared. He's with the team. He's been practicing, but I would venture to say that just because he's cleared to be with the team, he's out there practicing, and that he's going to participate in spring practice, and we'll probably see him in the G-Day game. That's not Kirby coming right out and saying he's cleared to play game 1. So let's just not put the cart before the horse as far as that's concerned. Everything sounds good. The trend lines are good. We're headed in the right direction, and the Dogs certainly need Colbie Young back. But until I hear Kirby Smart say Colbie Young is available to play in game 1, I'm just going to pump the brakes on that. But everything sounds good. So we can at least be happy about that much of it. So let's see.
Yeah, Coach, I'm sure there was an assessment period of the offseason. What did you guys take away from last year or learn in terms of areas of improvement that you guys need to make as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, you do it every year, regardless of the year. I'm sure the outside world thinks if you win every game or you win a national championship or you lose every game that the sky's falling or, you know, everything's hunky-dory. For us, it's always an approach of how do we get better? How do we improve? The first way to do that is through recruiting, through the transfer portal, through talent acquisition. The next is through looking at other things people do. Special teams was a big emphasis for us. We spent a week really on that in quality control. We spent each side of the ball had 2 full weeks in, and then the week before spring break. So we got really 3 weeks, 15 days of work on each side of the ball to look introspective and out to see what we can do to be better everywhere. And, you know, some of that's utilization of your personnel, which you don't actually know that yet. You're still trying to figure that out. We've got new players coming in on both sides of the ball. We'll find out a lot about them this spring. But we do a very, very intensive study of not only ourselves, but other people. And when you go back and you watch everything you watch, you're taking into account who are you playing against. You know, like what is the caliber of the opponent you're up against? And like what did we do well? What did we do poorly? What do we have to do better? And there's just a lot there. I could sit here for days and talk about that.
So that's a pretty open-ended question, but it's one that kind of has to be asked to kick the thing off. You know, if I had one question, I would have asked Kirby the thing that he always references, and that is any team every year. The only thing that the coaches want to do is try to get the very most out of that team that they can possibly get. Did they do everything that they could do to get the most out of each individual team? I would have asked questions like that, and that one specifically to Kirby Smart today, because I just wonder, given all the struggles that Georgia had last year with injuries and players in and out of the lineup for other reasons, just chemistry at points it looks like might not have been as good as it had been in years past. I'm just curious if Kirby would answer that question directly and say, yes, we did get the most we thought we could get out of that team, or no, we did not. If I had to guess, I would say that his answer would be to the negative. Because coming into the season, Georgia had one of the best rosters in college football. They had the Butkus Award winner on there. They had the top returning quarterback on that team last year. They had 4 returning offensive linemen. They had what they thought was going to be an explosive player in the backfield that they added through the portal. I would bet that if Kirby was being honest with himself and everybody else, he would say that that team did not reach its full potential last year. So if we know anything about Kirby Smart, we know that he's going to file that away and then do what he can do to make that better so he doesn't have to answer that way again. And one of the points that he brought forward right there was the utilization of personnel, especially on the offensive side of the football. I think there were a lot of questions that needed to be answered during these off-season reviews. So I'm hoping that when they went back and looked at what they could have done, keeping in mind what they had available to them at the time, I hope that they can spin it ahead to 2025 here and maybe find ways to utilize their game breakers a little bit more than maybe what we saw in 24. So we will see.
Kirby, when you say that Colbie is cleared, whenever a game rolls around, he'd be able to play just to make sure. And also with Noah Thomas, Zachariah Branch, what did you like about those guys that want to bring them in here?
Yeah, I'm excited about both those guys. Both really good players. Both have been successful in their organizations where they've been. They're both talented pass catchers, which seems to be the largest turnover position there is. Outside of quarterback, there's only one. That's the one that has the most transfer at its position. Receiver's probably next. And both those guys they're high caliber athletes, but they're high caliber people, and I've enjoyed working with them. The Branch brothers have been a great kind of injection into our off-season energy and workouts. They love working out. Their father trains guys. They love training. So the culture and work ethic that it requires to be successful here, they've jumped right in and done a great job of that. Noah has too. He's played in the SEC. He's been successful. So we still got to go out and do it on the field, but I'm excited about who they are.
Okay, so right there, clearly one of the things I want to bring to your attention is that Kirby didn't answer the question about whether or not Colbie would actually be available for game one. So just put a pin in that and just remember he's cleared, he's with the team, he's practicing, but until I hear Kirby Smart say he's ready for game one, I'm pumping the brakes on that one. Now, about the other part, it's great to hear that the Branch brothers have jumped right in. And Noah Thomas has jumped right in, and they're doing the work in the offseason because you got to get over that hurdle. You got to meet that benchmark. You have to meet that standard if you're at the University of Georgia. It sounds like they have, because if you do that part and you are the athlete that everyone thinks you are, then your athleticism will just take over. Yeah, you still have to learn the playbook, but at least we know you're not out there lollygagging, right? You're leading the pack. You're doing the work. So glad to hear that that's where that group is, and he had an out there. He didn't have to answer that first question because there were two questions, and Kirby Smart certainly took it. So putting a pin in that one for now.
You kind of touched on this just a little bit ago. You mentioned when things go wrong, people are always looking for somebody to blame. And I guess to that extent, after the season, Coach Bobo and Coach Searels both have been talked about a lot. I guess Paul Feinbaum had what he had to say about Mike, and I guess just what have you thought about? What do you think about when people say things like that about your coaches, and just a job you think they're doing as a whole for you right now?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I don't get into it much. I worked in a place for 10 years before I came here, and it's my 10th spring, so that's 20 years that I really don't pay much attention to anything outside. I got a lot of confidence in this organization, the foundation we've built. I've got the best staff in the country, and I have no doubt about that. I've got one of the most experienced SEC staffs there is, and to be honest with you, there's a lot of confidence in that, and I have a lot of confidence in it.
Well, I tell you, the one thing that we hear people when they talk about Kirby Smart that they like about him is that he stands on his business, right? And listen, there are a lot of Georgia fans out there. Some of you may be watching me right now who aren't going to like that answer at all because you think he's making the wrong decision. That's your right. Think what you want. But understand that if you're going to be happy when Kirby Smart stands on his business and defends his players or his program or reaches out there and digs a little bit at an opponent every once in a while, if you're going to be happy then be happy now because he stood on his business. He believes in his coaches. He believes in his coaching staff, and he's looking forward to 2025 rolling with what he's got. So I know that's not going to quiet the fan base out there who's got a lot to say about it. I've had a thing or two to say about it myself, but just understand Kirby's happy with who he has. So ultimately, Kirby's the face of the program. He's making the decisions, and wins and losses are what you're judged on. So we'll see. Kirby's happy, though, and I think that we as Bulldog fans just have to accept that fact and get used to it and ride with the dogs.
Was put in such a tough spot in that SEC championship game, and then the weeks after that with the Sugar Bowl. What have you seen from Gunner? Anything stood out since the Sugar Bowl to where you guys are now getting ready for spring practice?
Yeah, he's a tremendous leader, but that's nothing I didn't already know. I would be remiss if I said, well, that he's done this or that. He's done everything right since he's been here. That's really kind of what he embodies. He's a tough kid that loves football, that loves his teammates. You're not going to get a lot of rah-rah out of Gunner. He doesn't feel like that's his role. He earns people's respect by how he works and how he carries himself. He's got a tremendous amount of confidence in his ability. He's got a lot of knowledge of our system, and I think that kind of resonates with the other players. They rally around Gunner because they have a lot of respect for him.
Well, it's like he said he didn't learn anything he didn't know about Gunner Stockton right there in the offseason. And frankly, we aren't going to learn anything either, because everything he just said, if you're a Bulldog fan, you already knew that about Gunner Stockton. You know that he wants to be the starting quarterback at the University of Georgia. You know that he has won over his teammates and that they love him. And you know how you saw him perform in the Sugar Bowl, which was better than okay. So, yeah, I get it. You got to ask the question about Gunner. Maybe he would have given us something there, but he didn't. Par for the course. We're heading into this thing, and the quarterbacks are going to battle. But, you know, Gunner's been there long enough now that he knows how the system works. He knows the program. He knows the players. So at least going into this thing, you got to think he's got a little bit of a leg up in the competition. But that's just conjecture. We will all find out together soon enough.
Yeah, for the first time you're here at Georgia, you bring back all 10 assistants from the previous season. How much does that stability on the coaching staff help you guys, especially with as many new players as you bring in now every year?
Well, it's, you know, I could be sitting here before you last year on this exact day and have 4 new coaches. And there's a lot of positive about that. There's a lot of positive about everybody back. I think we built our program around retention. I think we've got the most stable not only staff, but stable organization in all of college football. And I think that's what we've hung our hat on, is we have stability, we have retention, we have a great foundation. We're built to last. We don't have to worry about year in, year out, tons of change. I think this league will chew you up and spit you out. This league is brutal when you look across, and I'm sitting in an SEC head coaches meeting, and there's Stoops and I are the most tenured guys, and there's a lot of guys that are in their first 3 to 4 years. And then you look at their staffs, and there's tremendous amounts of turnover. And then you look at their rosters, and there's even more turnover. So who does the best job retaining their players and coaches? I take a lot of pride in that, and I think that's one of our weapons.
So a couple things there. One, I mean, obviously he just reiterated what he said off the top, which is that is what has made Georgia the #1 program in college football. He's not off base there. He's not wrong. He's just trumpeting something that they've been able to do really well. And, you know, kudos to them. And I'm happy about it as a Georgia fan because I'm rooting for the university. So the more stable it is, the more, the less turnover there is, the happier I am. Steady as you go. And he did bring up the point there about the other coaches in this league specifically, but across the country, and how much turnover there are at these other places. And that's the thing that I think we all have to keep in mind as we get into each and every new season, is that none of this stuff happens in a vacuum, right? So yeah, Georgia might have some turnover here or there at this position or that position, but overall, the trajectory of the program, the superstructure of the program, all those things remain consistent because of the way they were built from the ground up. It's rock solid. So as long as Georgia is executing in the recruiting world and in the transfer portal world in the new age of NIL, and they are maintaining their top elite talent level, then they are going to be in as good a shape as anybody else heading into each and every season, because everybody else is going to have turnover too, not just Georgia. And odds are Georgia's got better players, or at least as good of players as any other team in the country most years. So that should make us all feel good as Georgia Bulldog fans.
Yeah, Kirby, when you lose so many guys who have played so much football on the offensive line, just what are your thoughts on that group heading into spring, and what do you want to see from so many of these guys who have an opportunity to step up, get more reps, and maybe earn a starting role?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because there's a ton of snaps there that were lost. A lot of guys that have started games and played, which that'll be evident, you know, tomorrow in the pro day. There's just, I don't know that, you know, I think we got a chance to get 4 guys drafted, which is unusual. You'd have 4 draft picks on the offensive line, meaning 4 guys leaving, and that's hard to replace. But, you know, we've kind of had this coming for a while, so it's been an anticipation of how we can create depth in our signing classes. We got a lot of young offensive linemen who haven't played, who need to grow up and play. And to be honest with you, it's a problem across the NFL where they don't have enough offensive linemen. I know nobody in the country right now in the college football is saying, well, we got enough linemen, we're good. I mean, there's not enough quality offensive linemen out there, and you're trying to build depth across the board in the position. What helps with that? Mid-years. Sometimes transfers, but offensive line aren't your most transfer portal type players positions. Not a lot of people get success through doing that. We found success through developing guys. And this group that's about to take the field or get their opportunity, a lot of them have been on that scout team for 2 years, and they're not where they need to be. But we're gonna push them and do the best combination to get 8 to 10 guys that can play winning football for us, which is our goal every year.
And there's that phrase, his famous favorite phrase, which is winning football. Not bodies, not guys that can show up, but guys that can show up and do what they're supposed to do consistently so that the coaching staff can trust them and game plan around them, right? Which, again, was one of the biggest issues last year. They often were very, very thin, even with all those returning players on the offensive line because of injuries, a lot of which we found out after the season we as fans were not even aware of over the course of the season. So 8 to 10, that sounds like a high number, but it's really not, right? You think about it, you're essentially just looking at a 2 deep right there. So he's right. They're going to have to replace a lot of starts, a lot of snaps right there. And it's going to be interesting to see what sort of personality this offensive line has, because based on the recruiting, we certainly know that they should have everything else you would need, the size, the intangibles. That's why Georgia goes and gets these guys along the lines of scrimmage. So now they have to get out there, get their war wounds a little bit, and just show that they're worth their salt. Can they stand up in SEC league play? So that's something that we're all going to learn together this year. And it's going to be interesting to watch the reports and see who sort of steps out there and makes their presence felt consistently, if you will. Because one thing's for sure, if Georgia's going to be who we all think they can be, they're going to have to run the football better than they did in 2024. That's one trajectory line that nobody likes, inside the program or out. They're going to have to get back to running it not only effectively and efficiently, but when they want to. So, is this unit going to be that unit? They're certainly big enough, but they absolutely have a lot to prove between the whistles to show us that they can get it done.
Kirby, when you talked about the self-assessment of last year and you talked about who you played, obviously last year's schedule was hard, but it also might be the new normal going forward with the SEC. So is there kind of a sense of a balance between it's not going to be dominance like some of your previous years, but also that there were some things last year that you needed to be better at despite the schedule?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit it dead on. I think the mature view of this and the 10,000 feet view of this is we're in a different climate than we were previously. We're in a different scheduling model than we were previously. The addition of Clemson on top of the people into our league, on top of the schedule that we had, I don't make any excuses about it. It's going to be really hard. I mean, we repeat that schedule next year with the exception of the Clemson out of conference game. So it's not going to get any easier. The norm is it's going to be challenging for everybody. I mean, the 2, 3, 4 power, the autonomy 5 power conferences, you're going to play better and more competition, which is going to make things more challenging. And I don't run or shy from that. I think that is very true that it's going to be, there may be an outlier, there may be a team out there that has the right mix and does it exactly right. But you're going to see teams that we thought going into last year that we would have to deal with more adversity, more failures, and how we dealt with them would indicate our year. And I was very pleased with how we responded to losses to keep ourselves afloat and to win the SEC championship. So that's not going to change over years to come.
Oh, this is an interesting sort of dichotomy right there, because I am going to be paying attention to how fans talk about the season and things that are coming up, because yes, everybody wants Georgia to play these big matchups against Texas or against LSU or out of conference games against Clemson. We should play them every year. Okay, fantastic. Kirby's not going to run from that in the scheduling, like he just said. But those are the same fans that when Georgia loses a game, or heaven forbids 2, now all of a sudden the season's trash, the coaches are trash, the players are trash, right? Same people. I see them, and it's crazy. It's crazy talk. But we got to make up our minds. The language has to change about how you talk about these teams and what it is they're doing, right? If you want to play these big games, if you want to be in the best conference in the land, which the SEC is, in case you need a reminder, then you're just going to have to understand that there's going to be a loss here or there, and it's part of it. It's just going to be that way. It's hard to see an age where you're going to have a super team that's going to roll through any of these new mega conferences. It's just going to be very, very rare. So we can't get in the habit or make it commonplace to start degrading and denigrating our teams, our players, our coaches, just because there's a loss somewhere along the way in a tough conference, right? When you're scheduling harder opponents. So I'm just going to be paying attention to how fans are talking about it, because something's going to have to change there. Otherwise, you're being completely intellectually dishonest in your conversation around football. And frankly, you're showing that you don't really know the sport. So that's okay. You can be a fan and not be a deep dive fan, right? But just don't act one way and say something and then turn around and say something else on another day. While I got you here, I want to remind you, look in the description below. If you think Kirby Smart is the best coach in college football, there are reasons for that. There are philosophies behind that. He's tapping into some of the things that have been done through the history of mankind. What I did is went and put together a little reading list of things that sort of frame the things that make Kirby Smart the way he is, the philosophies and things like that. If you're interested in reading up on some of the historical legends when it comes to strategy, both in life as well as in war and battle, then I suggest you jump in the description below and sign up for my newsletter. Because if you sign up for that newsletter, I'll give you my reading list free of charge. Just sign up for the newsletter and it'll come straight to your inbox. So if you're interested in that, give it a shot, check it out. I have found it to be quite entertaining and educational as I've made my way through the list.
2 questions, Kirby. Can you tell us a little about the status of DAYLEN Everett for spring? Is he limited at all? And
He's limited.
what was the your thought process in bringing in Harrison Maddox?
Bringing in who?
Your transfers in the secondary, Maddox and the other one, Harris, I think.
Yeah, I thought it said Harrison. Yeah, so DAYLEN will be limited for the spring. He's not out, but he's out there working out now, doing things and coming back from a sports hernia, sports kind of a growing repair. But prognosis is great. He's doing things limited. He's moving around. He's being a great leader. All the things we expected. And then we had Dan and MALAKI leaving with a tremendous amount of snaps there with those guys going out. We needed to make sure we've got depth at the secondary and growth. We signed some good young ones who are here now, and they're working with us. Some of them were here in December. Then we were able to get the 2 guys out of the portal that we think are going to help us as well.
Roster management.
Kirby, you talked about the coaching staff. With Andrew Thacker, does his role change, this season, or is he pretty much doing the same stuff he was doing previously?
No, his role's changed. He's taking on a position job. He's going to be working, almost primarily with the secondaries, specifically the stars. He'll be with those guys, the nickels, and help coach. Those guys are kind of a quasi position now. They're half outside linebacker, they're half linebacker, they're half DB, they're a little bit safety, they're special teams players, but he'll take on a role with those guys and spend time with them.
But in that same vein, what will MUSCHAMP'S role kind of be with the program this spring and moving forward?
We'll probably decide that at a later time.
That's interesting.
Kirby, I know there's competition for position every spring, but in terms of the quarterback position, I don't know if true is the right word, but competition at that position in terms of snaps, distribution between Ryan and Gunner, and then also I'm wondering with the advancement of all this NIL legislation and rules, has your organizational chart changed in terms of who's doing what in the roster management area?
Not specifically. We've got a lot of people in charge of roster management, including myself, including our football ops staff is involved. Our operations/player development, player personnel staff. Everybody gets involved in that. It's a team effort. So we've reorganized and restructured some things in terms of what falls under whose duty and whose aspects. But at the end of the day, I'm not ready to run off and go hire somebody that's just going to make all the decisions for what goes on the football field. I think I've got to stay involved in that heavily. We've got the capacity and the quality of people in the areas that I think we need. So I think we'll be fine in that world as it changes. As far as quarterback, it's just like every position, guys. I mean, every day you're competing and fighting and doing the best you can to compete with every guy. I mean, you think it's redundant or coach speak, but there really isn't a depth chart. There's just reps. And in the spring, we're giving reps out. We're getting 4 reps with 4 groups at some positions, and we want to see all those guys compete and get better.
Oh, competition. There we go. That's what it's about. You're just out there getting reps. There is no depth chart. It's just reps. That's pretty cool. I mean, it's one thing for all of us to think about who's ahead of who and who's winning the battles. But that's about the most pure way I've ever heard Kirby say it. There is no depth chart. There's just reps. So put it on tape. How many times have we heard Kirby talk about what the scouts love to see is that practice tape? So practice is where you win your job. That's where you win your time. That's where you make your move and prove your bones, right? Is on the practice field. So this is the season for that. As far as the NIL stuff is concerned, he's talking about the people inside the program who are, quality people who know what they're doing. That goes right back to that superstructure thing I was talking about before. One, he's not going to unplug and just put somebody else, like a general manager, in charge of handling all of the personnel stuff for his team. Kirby Paul Smart's not going to do that. That's not who he is. He's got to have his fingers in the pie. And I really like that about him. I appreciate that about his approach. And the fact that he has people on his staff inside that building that he trusts to just elevate, to help him handle that. I appreciate that too, because it shows that yes, he's plugged in, but no, he's not drowning in it. He's still out here trying to be the CEO of Georgia football and make sure that the best people are handling the things that fit their skill set best, right? That's what a good leader does. So I appreciate that. I like the little window, too, into the way he thinks about it and how he's going to be hands-on, which, again, is really the only way I would ever want my head coach to be.
Coach, I know you wanted to reference Pro Day tomorrow.
I don't know where you guys are. I'm not going to be at the Pro Day tomorrow to be able to do the media, so I wanted to give you guys an opportunity if you wanted to. I'm going to be here tomorrow for most of the day, but I've got to leave at some point, so I won't be out there for the Pro Day during it. And if there's any questions you guys have about the Pro Day or those guys, feel free to ask. I'm really concerned with my team, not concerned with the Pro Day. But the Pro Day is certainly important to a group of players who have been tremendous for Georgia. And, we all have talked about the accolades they have and the winningest record in the history of the school. And they've done a lot of good things. And I know a lot of them will do well tomorrow, but I'm not going to be out there the whole time for that.
Kirby, there's coaches out there canceling spring games left and right. Some have talked about moving spring practice to a summer. How much of that did you evaluate, and why is it important for you guys to have G-Day kind of as normal this year?
Yeah, first of all, I think there's a lot of – everybody wants to talk about that and make it about the portal and make it about this decision to not or have spring games based on the fluidity of players. I don't know that that's every coach's reason. There's a lot of coaches that didn't like the spring game before the portal ever came about. Everybody has different approaches. My approach has been I like to have spring football games, but that's every year we make that decision based on where we are. We haven't even practiced yet. So, it would be remiss if I said 100% I'm dead set we're having a spring game. I leave every option open. That's my 15th practice. So we can do what we want to do. We're planning to have a spring game. I've talked to Josh Brooks about it several times. We've had conversation, but that doesn't mean it can't change. Last year, I think Kentucky didn't have any defensive linemen healthy. They weren't able to have a spring game. So we don't know. I can't forecast the future to know exactly what's going to happen 15 days from now. I do know we have to get better, and we've got to practice football. So when that happens, as it goes, we spread ours out over more time than most people. We have 5 weeks, and we have 3 practices a week. So we want to try to get recovery and stay healthy so we can have really good practices. But I like spring games. I want to have a spring game. I think it's important because you allow kids to play that don't typically get to play. You sometimes allow fans to enjoy an experience in Athens that they normally wouldn't get. But I'm not ready to say that it's 100%.
Well, I'm glad to hear Kirby finally have a statement on that because, and I'm going to have more to say on this in a future video, so be sure to check that out. But I'm somebody who's happy that Georgia's having a spring game for at least a couple of the reasons that Kirby mentioned right there. But I'm also somebody who thinks that this whole business about it's because of NIL and the transfer portal is a bit of a cop-out. It's a little bit of BS right there. But as I said, I'll get into all that later in a future video. But it is interesting that Kirby, as a good leader would do, doesn't paint himself into a corner, but he understands. He knows that the University of Georgia is important here in the state of Georgia. He knows that the football program is important to the university as well as to the fan base of the football program. And he knows that there are people who love to make that trip every opportunity they get. And for some people, they don't get that opportunity during the regular season for a myriad of reasons. And to have an opportunity to come and be inside Sanford Stadium and watch football is something that we as football fans should always appreciate. Right? It doesn't matter what the schedule is. It doesn't matter what the rosters are. It doesn't matter what the win-loss records are, whether it's spring or fall. If you are a Georgia Bulldogs football fan and you have an opportunity to go be inside Sanford Stadium and watch the Dogs play, that's an opportunity to rejoice and enjoy. And I, for one, can't wait to be back inside Sanford Stadium in April to watch the Dogs play. And I believe that most of you watching this video are going to be right there with me in that sentiment.
Since you're asking about the pro day guys, I want to kind of ask about MALAKI and MYKEL. With MALAKI, how much have you talked to NFL teams about his ability to play both nickel and safety? And with MYKEL, I guess he said at the Combine that he was playing pretty hurt for a lot of last year, kind of fighting through it. What do you remember just about him trying to gut through some of those games?
Yeah, MALAKI is a very, futuristic safety. I mean, he can play nickel. He can play man-to-man. More and more, the safety is not what the safety was. The safety has evolved in the NFL because they're in open sets. They're playing more middle field coverage. He has to be able to play man-to-man. He has to be able to cover people, matchups on tight ends as they bring the more and more tight ends to the league. Like he fits what teams want to do. So he has a lot of value in the National Football League in terms of matchup and cover because every game comes down to matchups in their league. So everybody's asked about that, and more teams are intrigued but at his versatility. As far as MYKEL, he was a warrior this whole year. You know, he was dead set he wanted to play in the Alabama game and pushed so hard to come back, and he wasn't 100% then, and he was a lot of games that he only played a few snaps in because he wasn't 100%. If you go back to the Auburn game, he was jumping and tearing at the bit to get in those games. And I think when those teams look and they see how you create value for yourself, there's more of a time in National Football League where people have to play at 80 and 90% health because they don't have another option. And their 80 and 90% is better than the guy that could get off the streets 100%. So they want kids that have toughness and can play. And I think, MYKEL battled through that all year. And it was really tough on him because he had one of the best fall camps that I've ever seen. And the good news is all those scouts saw that too. And I think that'll pop up where he gets drafted at, because for a guy that's going to get drafted really high, he wasn't 100% all year. But they respect the fact that he pushed through and competed.
Oh, my gosh. That's really telling right there. So first on MALAKI Starks, he's talking about everything he can do. His versatility is a huge benefit to him. Not only is he a great young man, but clearly he's very talented on the football field, and that's going to benefit him in this year's NFL draft, because what is it they say? Availability is the best ability, and the thing right behind that would be versatility, right? And MALAKI has all those things. He's not a risk as far as off-the-field issues. He's going to be drafted very high. He's going to be very successful. And MYKEL Williams, I like grimaced when I heard Coach say he had his best fall camp, and we saw that in his performance against Clemson. And then he got injured. And you could tell the rest of the year he wasn't quite who we all expected him to be. It says a lot about how much he pushed through and gave us what he could as a Georgia Bulldogs player. I mean, yes, he's playing for his future, but he wanted to be out there playing. You have to ask yourself, would it have made a difference here or there in the win-loss record? Maybe not, but it would have changed potentially the way some of those games looked, especially if you look at Auburn and be like, how are they scoring? Or you're looking at, some of these other games where maybe he didn't get to play as much as normally he would have had he been 100% healthy. Would those scores look the way they look? Who knows? But I hate to hear that the young man was ready to have a wonderful year and then got injured and then never really could get it back to where it was supposed to be, just simply because he's so much fun to watch. And he's going to be fun to watch in the NFL too, because for sure he's going to be a high draft pick in the league.
Yeah, with this team and there's so much newness, what do you hope to learn about them this spring?
Yeah, I want to see the fire. I want to see the passion, the energy. I want to see who wants to be a good football player, who really cares about this game. Like, they care more about the game than they do about their NIL revenue stream. Like, if you really, really, really care about the game and you want to be good, it doesn't matter about any kind of money. It matters how I play the game. And more we're seeing across college football, the purest, the ones that care about the game the most, play the hardest. And usually the team that plays hardest wins. I know everybody thinks it's just whoever's more talented, but there's a whole lot to how hard you play and how much you care about it. So my goal is to find out, how hard do you want to play? How much do you really want to be great? Because if you do, it'll show by how you practice.
Oh, I love that. That's a coaching answer right there. Show me. I understand you want to get your monies. Good on you. That's the world we live in. But you want to be great, then you got to go show me. And that's what spring practice is for. I can remember now granted, I wasn't playing at the University of Georgia, okay? But I had a moment leading up to my junior year in high school. I had played as a sophomore. All right. I had played in key moments as a sophomore. But heading into my junior year, I was expected to take that next step, but there was still a senior in front of me on the depth chart, and we were vying for playing potential. And we had an all-area offensive guard. This young man was 320 pounds, 6'4", and I was put into an Oklahoma drill with him. It was just three of us, right? 3 down linemen, center, well, call it what you want, but there were 3 offensive linemen, 3 defensive linemen, and then you had a back. And we had the bags on the sides. We were doing the old school Oklahoma the way we knew it. And I was lined up against this young man who was an all-area, all-region, that level of player. And lo and behold, I won not 1 rep, not 2 or 3. I won 5 consecutive reps against this all-region player because I had better technique. I was trying to earn my way onto the field. And when it was over, everybody was screaming, hollering, and yelling, and the coach runs up, legendary Hall of Fame coach, runs up, smacks me on the helmet, grabs me by the face mask, and says, "Son, you can play for me. You can play for me if you play like that." Changed the course of my high school career and the rest of my career as a football player. Went on to earn me a scholarship offer, all because you get it done on the practice field. That was my experience. And there's somebody else out there on a much bigger stage, granted, who's going to have that opportunity to get out there and show their worth between the whistles, between the bags, right? Put your feet in the ground, move another human being, and show that you want to play. It has to matter, because if you're great, or if you want to be great, the rest of that stuff's going to come. The money's going to come, the contracts, the NFL future, all that's going to come for these young men. That's not what Practice Georgia is about. Practice at Georgia is about getting better. It's about developing. It's about practicing against the very best in the country every day to prove your mettle and show your worth. Man, that got me fired up. I love that. More of that, Coach. More of that.
I want to ask you about, I guess, Dan and Chaz. These are 2 guys that didn't get invites to the Combine, and Dan obviously showed up well at the Senior Bowl. Do you ever get any say in terms of who goes to the Combine? And I guess in the years you've done this, the 20 years specifically, have you seen a guy like Dan overlooked? And just how much of an outcry did you think that was that he didn't get that invite?
Yeah, I can't really speak on that. I can only defend my players and the character that those two have. They're tremendous football players and even better people. Do I think they were deserving? Absolutely. But do I know what goes into it to sit here and be critical of an organization that runs one of the biggest businesses in all of the world, one of the most successful businesses of all the world? They have a limited number of spots. They have to base that on some criteria, and I'm sure they have a rhyme or reason for what they do in terms of getting looks at people. They also get lots of looks at our guys because they are open to come here every single day. They get a lot of opportunities to see our guys. They got to see Dan at the Senior Bowl. They got to see Chaz at the other bowl, which he got injured at. So I don't know what all goes into that. I'm not here to be critical of some people who make those decisions. I think they know what they're doing when they make them. But I can certainly tell you those two players are going to make somebody's team a lot better in the National Football League.
There you go. Kirby Smart wrapping up his first meeting with the media as the Dogs open spring practice 2025. I look forward to the rest of the road, and we're going to keep you up to date with all the breaking news, all the new interesting tidbits as we move forward. So keep it locked in here. Come on back. And, you're already here, so hang around and watch this next video. I'll see you over there.
Told them, how about them fucking dogs? That's what I told them.